I'm your host, Dr. Graham Taylor. My guest today is Dr. Amy Parks. Amy is the founder and CEO for the Clinical Supervision Directory, which connects clinical supervisors with supervision seekers and provides an ongoing support to the mental health field with education in supervision and ethics. Amy, who holds a doctorate in educational psychology, is also the executive director of Wise Mind Solutions, a Northern Virginia-based group psychotherapy practice. She's got over 30 years of experience focused on children, teens, and families. We're excited to have Amy with us today to discuss clinical supervision and her new project, the Clinical Supervision Directory. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here, Graham.
Thank you so much. We're excited to have you here as well. You know, Amy, the Clinical Supervision Directory, I'm going to refer to it probably as CSD, just to kind of shorten it.
Me too. Yep.
Thanks. Good. Thank you. Is the first directory of its kind in mental health profession. And in developing it, you've completely changed the old ways. I remember for me, and I'm sure for you too, the old ways that one would search for supervision. And I'm going to have you describe it later in the show in more detail. But in short, it's kind of a one-stop shop for supervision seekers to research and find the supervisors that are going to be best for them. And as I was thinking about this and learning about it, I was curious, what was it like in your training? And how did you secure supervision for your licensure process?
So excellent. I need that soundbite because exactly what you just said is exactly the goal, which is being a one-stop URL. And when I was coming up in my training, I had to ask a friend of a friend. So I went through my master's degree program, and I actually didn't really realize I wanted to be a licensed clinician until several years after I graduated. I went into education as a school psychologist, and then later realized I wanted to get licensed. And so I had to ask a friend of a friend, and then they asked a friend of a friend, which is how you find a really good restaurant. That's not how you find the person who's going to guide your professional career, right?
That's right.
I got lucky because the friend of a friend knew a good friend, but that's really kind of how I ended up finding the person who ended up doing my supervision. And I was, again, really lucky. And sometimes people land in the right place with the right supervisor at work or the right supervisor in their community placement and their internship or something. But more often than not, they graduate and they end up on their parents' couch because they don't know where to go. And as much as our universities do an amazing job of training, they don't necessarily have a responsibility really to handhold through that next step. Yeah. And so from my experience, I got kind of lucky, but I meet hundreds of people every day, just like you and I, who, either were lucky or weren't lucky and went through just crazy situations where either they had a terrible match with their supervisor, or it took months and months and months for them to find a supervisor, or the supervisor that they had turned out to not actually be a licensed supervisor at all. And so
that's the
so
worst.
Many horror stories I've heard. In fact, we actually did a whole series on TikTok in October around horror stories of supervision because there were so many. I could do 30 days of them.
That's awful. Well, what you're raising right here is such a good reminder to us that this period in a licensed, soon to be licensed eligible early career practitioner is really a critical time. They've done all of this hard work. They've invested so much time, energy, sweat equity, all those things that goes into this. And then they're ready to launch into an independent, practice or become an independent practitioner. But they've got to bridge one more thing. And early career practitioners, going into supervision for licensure, really, they're looking to bridge their experience in the classroom to real world independent practicing, being practitioners in an independent way. And it's such an important time. Give us a sense of the importance of this transitional period in your mind, as it sets an important foundation for one's practice, and how you see good supervision being a critical piece in this bridging from the classroom to independent practice.
There's really nothing more essential than this period. I mean,
I couldn't agree more.
States, in our 50+1 states, so I always say that because of DC is not really a state. So in our 50+1 states, we have a varied degree of responsibilities for that period of time of training for people that are residents / associates, whatever their title is, and that varies as well. And it can range anywhere from 1,000 hours of direct service to 4,000 hours of direct service. 4,000 hours of direct service. And I guarantee you that many of those people have maybe had a maximum of 200. And that's, maybe 300 in their internship. And so it is a period of exponential growth of time, expansion of time, during which they're doing direct service. And during that time, they have anywhere from 50 to 200 hours of then supervision. And that experience is very pivotal because they are no longer being supported at the university level. They're also no longer supported by a cohort of peers. Right. They're in an experience where they are navigating new employment. They are in a role where they are fully responsible for the clients they're serving. They're no longer a student, and they are determining not only what their role is as an early career practitioner, a new person in the workforce.
Yes.
Not only that, but also how to navigate having a boss, how to navigate having someone being your clinical supervisor, your managerial supervisor, having colleagues, having, if you work with children, having parents that are overseeing you, working with collateral caregivers, all of the things that you have to navigate when you're in the mental health field. These aren't people that are merely, and not to minimize anyone else's role, but that are merely going to become accountants and read somebody's spreadsheets. Right. These are people that are impacting the lives and well-being and holding, potential, people's potential lives in their hands.
Even generationally.
Critical decisions, and absolutely generationally. So, and so much, there's so much impact to that. So the supervisor and the supervisor's role becomes very delicate in holding that space for that early career practitioner. And so it's an incredible responsibility.
Yeah, I what you just did right there was nicely capturing how a early career practitioner, as well as a supervisor, gets to kind of back up, pan out, and from a 10,000-foot view, just so appreciate what that role is about, what that transitional time is really entailing and requiring, and the importance of it. Sometimes, you went through it, I went through supervision, 2,000 hours, these kinds of things, and 4,000 hours. And when you're in it, you don't fully appreciate all of it. When you back out, pan out, or and you get to look at it the way that you just described it. Someone considering being a supervisor, someone considering who do I want to go into supervision with, appreciating all the facets of it that you just mentioned, really can help make that decision-making process something very intentional, very much more clear. And I'm thinking about, just because I'm going to talk about the supervisor here for a moment, then I'm going to come back to what should an ECP be looking at in supervision. But let's go back to the practitioner you're talking about, and this idea of how should a supervisor be thinking about their role and the importance of it. And just because one has been practicing in the field for a while, maybe even teaching, it doesn't necessarily make them a good supervisor automatically, right? Even though they've gone through it. And what are some of the qualifications and, importantly, character traits of a good supervisor?
Yeah, so I think about three things when I think about the best supervisors. There's certainly skill levels that are critical. A strong sense of ethics, a clear understanding of your state laws, a very wide and deep tool bench or a skill bench that you can access when your supervisee is struggling. A sense of compassion when your supervisee is struggling with yourself and with your supervisee. Excellent communication skills, supportive empathy. But I think of really all of those things coming under three buckets. One of them is collaborative. One of them is a collaborator. One of them is as a consultant. And one of them is as a coach. And so those are really, or the consultant actually is really more almost like a counselor consultant. So really, in that you're never really your supervisee's counselor, but there may be times when you do have to take on an empathetic sort of counseling tone to help uncover opportunities where potential transference or countertransference is happening, and help bring some awareness of that when blinders are on or bias is occurring. And so that kind of consultant role kind of comes in there, and that coaching role kind of maybe bleeds a little bit into counseling. And
Yeah,
so,
really. Yeah. Continue, please.
No, that's what I'm thinking. So I really kind of look at those three things, and a collaborator, because really that's where how you're partnering.
Yeah, really good. I think those are all wonderful piece of kind of your 3 C's, 3 cubed or C cubed. The idea here is that, it's important. Some people sometimes think that supervision, consultation, and mentorship are all the same thing. They're just interchangeable words, but they're not, because supervision has a legal component to it, doesn't it? Which is what you're talking about. You're signing off on somebody, you're responsible for somebody, and you have a legal component to this. Briefly talk about that. Then I want to go back to something you're talking about in terms of kind of the coach and the consultant piece. Talk about how those 3 are different: supervision, consultation, and mentorship.
Yeah. So unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to supervise because of that litigious component.
Yes.
And I see a lot of people saying, "Oh, I'm afraid. Like, it doesn't feel safe. I'm concerned about that." So yeah. So when you have a supervisee under your license, they're lined up underneath you, and if anything legally or litigious happens with them, then you become legally responsible for them. And that is why I'm very clear that a supervisor, and I reassure all supervisors, look, that's true. These people are working under your license. You continue to work and you feel confident in your work. When you bring these people on, part of your responsibility is to train them in such a way that you feel confident that they are going to do the job that represents you. And so, but that means that you actually have to do a little bit more work, meaning you have to make sure that you're clear about your ethics, which hopefully you are. You have to make sure you're clear about the laws of your state and the supervision requirements of your state. So many people aren't, and that's a real problem. And be really clear about supervision, about communication. I had a supervisee come to me yesterday, and he said he's working with a couple parenting, and they have a contentious custody battle happening. And he said, "So I'm going to send this email," and it was pretty wordy, and it was kind of, for lack of a better explanation, too many words.
Yes.
And he said, "I'm going to send this email." And I said, "Yes, you could send that, or you could send this." And my email was about 6 words. And I said, "Either one is fine. Generally, however, less is better." And he said, "Thank you." So my response was, like, I get it. You can send that, and you can send this, so you kind of come at it from, like, I get where you're coming from. I want to support you. And I've been around the block 150 more times than you have. Yeah. And so here's where we're going to come from. And then I have to stand behind him if he sends his own email.
Yeah, really good. I think that's part of the consultant kind of coaching piece in there. That's part of the art, I think, of supervising. Yeah. You're also talking about another and I think this is an important piece, both for supervisors and for supervisees. Therapy is a lovely, intimate, important relationship that people get to form with their therapists. There's safety, there's boundaries, there's things that, given the fiduciary nature of it as well, provide the safest space possible for people to explore aspects of themselves that they have no other place in the world to do it with good therapy. But there's also things that come up: transference, countertransference. And that relationship that takes place in therapy comes into the supervisory relationship as well. How could it not, through parallel process?
Sure.
What's happening in the therapy session is going to come into the session with a supervisor. Of course it does. What I love that you're saying is that some of the qualities for a supervisor that are really necessary to track and identify some of those parallel processes, how to be able to talk about and artfully work with countertransference and transference in necessary ways, so the supervisee does not get caught up in those in enactments or in therapy stopping ways. That supervisor has to have a really good sense of themselves theoretically, and a really good sense of themselves in their own transference and countertransferential tendencies, and being able to be aware of and find ways to bring to consciousness hey, here's what I think's going on, or what do you think's going on even between us, to be
Right.
able to be comfortable in the moment. Say more about that.
Yeah, it absolutely takes a high level of wonder and
Yeah.
just that awareness of what parallel process is and what it could look like. And
Yeah.
then being willing to say, hey, I'm noticing something in the room, or could this be a connecting something that's,
Yes.
I'm seeing this connection? Could this be something that's true? And, being very comfortable saying that. One of the things that comes up a lot, Graham, is, and one of the challenges for many supervisors is this difference between being managerial and being clinical.
Yeah.
And it's very important to be clear. And some supervisors struggle with this a lot. Supervisors rather struggle with this a lot. And I see this. It's very difficult to ride a line if you are both the managerial supervisor, meaning you like run your practice, and you're the clinical supervisor. So you say, we're going to talk now about your work hours. And
Mm.
okay, now we're shutting that off. And now we're going to talk about your clinical cases. That is really not a suggested strategy to use to supervise. The reason why is because it becomes confusing for the supervisee to understand where their boss turns off their takes off their boss hat, and puts on their clinical hat. And that's that dual relationship, which we know about in therapy, is just as confusing for the supervisee and supervisor as it is for the therapist and the person in therapy. And so I generally don't suggest people do that or have that kind of a dual relationship, because it can be really challenging.
Yeah, I
Um,
certainly can.
so, that kind of thing comes up too, where you have to be very clear. Like right now we're in clinical supervision and we're talking about clinical cases and things that have to do with your employment. You go over here to John. He's the one that handles the HR stuff, kind of thing.
Yeah, really good. Keeping that kind of separation there so that
Mm-hmm.
when they're in supervision, they get to be fully immersed
Mm-hmm.
with the expectations that are there. Well, let's talk about that piece. So we're talking about the supervisor, what makes for a good supervisor. You're encouraging them to understand the importance of the role that they're in. And again, even though they've been there, to be able to give forward in a way through their supervision, something to somebody that's so important to bridge this. Let's talk about the supervisee. And for those thinking about receiving good supervision, what would you be encouraging them to be looking for? And what would they know would make up some components for a really effective and good supervisory process?
Yeah, so we have, when people come into the CSD, we have kind of an onboarding sequence that helps new supervision seekers figure out those kinds of things. And so we worked really hard to help people see that some of the things they want to look for, again, go back to, you want someone that knows the laws of the state. You want someone to be confident in what's happening in their state or states that they're licensed in. You want to be sure that the person that you're meeting with, that you actually have some alignment with. And so one of the things that we're really proud of and is really critical to the CSD and the purpose of it is to help you know more about the person that you're connecting with. Do they speak your language? Potentially, do you have a native language that's not potentially English? Do you need to have that considered? Is their office accessible to you? Do they have a business background that's interesting to you? Do you want to maybe open your own practice? Do they work in maternal mental health? And that's a perinatal mental health. Is that something interesting to you? Are you curious about polyvagal theory and neuroscience? And is that an area that you're interested in? Do you want someone that has some areas of expertise in that domain? Is the person that you want to work with, do they work exclusively with children and families, or do they work exclusively in geriatric work? Like those are some things that, when you're looking, you don't have to know all these answers and know all these things that you're looking for, but it's great if you can have a feeling for, hey, I'm thinking that this is an area of specialty for me, and be open to, to those kinds of things. So that's sort of narrowing it down, but like to broaden it out and to look at it a little bit of a bigger way, I think we want someone that also is willing, a supervision seeker, that's also open to the possibilities, that's willing to be creative and open and have a beginner's mind. So they can go into it and say, hey, I'm willing to try that because you're trying to expose me to new things, new opportunities, new areas where you think I could shine. So, point me at it and let me try.
Yeah, really good. I think, you're describing right there this sense of looking for a goodness of fit.
Exactly.
And looking at those things very, very importantly. Does this person have this? Does the supervisor have their act together? Do they understand the laws? Do they understand the procedures? Do they have things separated? You're also talking about, I want to be able to align myself, goodness of fit. I want to align myself with what I want to be doing down the road. And does the supervisor have what's necessary for me to bridge that classroom information and that knowledge and experience I've had with what I'm going to be doing in the real world, so I can walk in with confidence, feel well equipped, and feel competent in what I'm going to be doing? So yeah, really good. Well, let's shift a little bit. And I want to talk about this thing called the Tinder of supervision and what this is about here, and this Clinical Supervision Directory. You gotta unpack this for us here.
So I don't know how we came up with the Tinder of supervision, but essentially what we realized was, people were asking us. We created the Clinical Supervision Directory, or I kind of came up with it in 2020, and we were all sort of during 2020 sitting kind of around trying to figure out how to solve the world's problems. And
right.
And a number of my colleagues, we were talking about this challenge of finding supervision. And I work in several universities, and I see this on a daily basis, and had my own situations. And I promise you, Graham, I looked really hard. To see if anyone was solving this problem, because I thought surely our associations had solved the problem, but they hadn't. And several states have directories. Alaska has a really good one, but it's so big it has to. It doesn't have a choice. So a couple other states have a growing ones, but they're state isolated. So if you graduate from University of Maryland, but then you move to Ohio, you might be out of luck. Or you're in the military and you're moving from state to state, and that was a really big push. You're out of luck. Because you have to go start over again and find the whole. Many times you have to start over again, find the board link, and then find the supervisor list. So many states, of course, every state's mandated to train supervisors, but not mandated to list who they are.
Yeah.
So what I said was, wouldn't it be great? This is how every good idea starts, but then you kick yourself. But I thought, wouldn't it be great if someone made a one URL where just every university student could just go and say, hey, I live in New Jersey, I want to find a supervisor. And then all the supervisors in New Jersey just popped up, and then you could just pick one, just like Tinder, you just go on there and say, I want a really cute boy who looks like this and graduated from Yale, and he has, he's a banker or whatever it is, you could just put it in. And then, of course, my friend said, well, Amy, then you need to do that. And I thought, oh, gosh, is this going to be a real business? Do I have to get a LLC and do it for real? And my accountant said, yeah, that's going to be real. And then I said, well, does this mean I'm going to be the supervision lady? Is this going to be an even bigger? And everyone said, yep, that's going to be what's going to happen to you. And that's in fact what happened.
Gotcha. That's really good.
So we launched it in 2021, and we said, here we are, the Tinder supervision. But let me be clear, there's no dating in supervision, because of course our lawyers do not like that. That's a big no-no, and not allowed. But we connect people. So we don't have anything to do once you have the connection. So say, for example, you're the supervisor and I'm the supervision seeker. I can log into the CSD for free as a supervision seeker. I can look in any state in the US. If I'm an RPT if I have a play therapist seeker, I can look for a play therapy supervisor in any state, because they can supervise across the US, as can EMDR supervisors. Mm-hmm. And then the other LMFT or LPCs, counselors, MFTs, and social workers are, of course, state dependent. And so any seeker can look for free, and then the supervisors buy a listing either monthly or annually. And so I can send you an email directly, and then you get a notice that says, hey, Amy's sending you an email. You should look for it, write her back and let her know if you're available or you're interested in supervision. And then we can connect. And when I send you that email, I fill out a little bit of paperwork, or answer a few questions, so you get a little bit of information about me, and go from there. And you have full control over your profile. So you can put your photo and a map to your office and how much, if you charge for supervision. Some people do, some people don't. How much you charge, full bio. Another cool thing is you can even put a link to your office. And so our SEO, our site speaks to your site through Google, the magic of the internet. And we actually get backlinks to each of our sites, which raises our SEO to both of our sites and becomes kind of an employment engine for you. So if you're hiring supervision seekers, you're hiring residents, you can say, hey, we're hiring. We want to bring people on to our practice in New Jersey. And so it becomes, if people say, hiring residents New Jersey or residents New Jersey, it will come up in Google higher up or more frequently as in Google searches.
You also have a partnership program allowing the supervisors to connect with accredited program graduates in the USA. Mention just that a little bit.
Yeah. So so you mean in terms of our partnership with the universities?
Yeah.
So we connect with all of the CACREP accredited universities to provide them with a course on supervision relationships for their graduates. And then we also give them the opportunity to connect with the directory. So we give in fact, I have a whole stack of them right next to me. We give all of the graduating students this postcard that says, this is not the exact example, but we say, congratulations, you've graduated and now you have 4,000 hours more to go of training. And we give them some stickers and some other swag, but essentially we say, and here's your next step. And, kind of like a welcome to the profession package.
Yes.
And we're really excited about that. And that's an easy way for universities to say, and here you go, here's your next thing. Yeah. And so that's a way that we've formed a connection with our universities. And we've done that with the help of Triad. We've done that with the help of Tavera, which is a company that works with universities in supporting internships, and a number of other corporate partnerships.
Really good. So the directory is both a matchmaker in some ways, and also it really simplifies something that the universities should be doing, but they don't oftentimes take the time to do. You've really given them.
They don't have the time to do it. So,
well, I don't know.
Well, maybe they do. I don't know. I try
but I think what we could say is maybe they haven't prioritized it in a way that would be really helpful for those graduating. But you make it easy for them to give their students something that I think allows them to really be a good resource, or you to be a good resource for them to refer that on. What I also like that you're doing too is, as I've learned more about this, is you're encouraging supervision as an opportunity for those that are practitioners to look to enhance and grow and maybe branch out into new dimensions of their professional lives. And how might you encourage possible interested practitioners to think about this area of expansion, and what questions should they ask themselves, and how would they know if they were ready?
Well, I'll tell you, my big dream is for every association in the US, every professional association for mental health, for counselors, for social workers, for MFTs, to provide the Clinical Supervision Directory as a value add, so that we can help clinicians see that supervision is the way. I don't know, I sound like an evangelist, but really is the way to help the next generation of clinicians become street ready for the mental health, exponentially growing mental health emergency, really, that we have experienced over the last several years. Really, supervision, when you have been in the field for a number of years, becomes really generative. If we look at our generativity of our careers, it really becomes the legacy of what you're doing. And when you have been in the field for a period of time, beyond 5 years, 10 years, there's a point in time where you have so much institutional knowledge that the loss of that to our field is just tragic.
Great.
And, if we look back in our days, in my day, at least, I'll just age myself, but in my day, when I was actually just talking to some people the other day, and we were saying that, we're the people now that are writing the textbooks. We're the people that are teaching at the conferences. We're the people that are leading the big trainings and founding the theories. And, we're the OGs now, which is kind of cool and scary at the same time. I was telling my husband that. I was like, I'm kind of cool now. But anyway, he didn't believe it. But the point is that, we are the legacy. And in order for us to pass it, we have to actually train the next generation in that legacy. And so, we have a sticker, the CSD has a sticker that says supervision, because one of me just isn't enough.
Mm.
And that's the fact of the matter is exactly that. If we don't pass on this institutional knowledge, our passions, our ethics, our skills, our compassion, our calm, our understanding of the world, then who is?
That's right. It's like what you're saying.
If we shy away from it, we're afraid of the legal issue. We're afraid of, we can't be that. We can't do that. So if we're together, if we do it together, it'll be okay.
You know what I like about that, Amy, is that we get to see that we get to shape our future clinicians and to really be having a hand in how our profession that we've worked so hard for and committed so much to and want people to reap the lifelong generational benefits of, we can be responsible and have a role in, not responsible, we can have a role in and an imprint on where it goes in the future. And I love that vision. We get to have an imprint on where this goes and a legacy that gets to be lived. Interestingly enough, right around the time when, Erickson's saying, hey, in this generativity phase of your life, what a great place to be giving forward in kind of that sage kind of a role and to take all that you've accumulated and pass it on. And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful role. I would love, Amy, for our listeners to be able to learn more about you after our podcast today, as well as the Clinical Supervisory Directory. Give us some ways that they can get a hold of you.
Absolutely. So they can, the name of our directory is quite long. It is the Clinical Supervision Directory. And they can also find it at sort of a shortcut, which is the-csd.com. So that's a lot shorter and a lot less risk of misspelling. But that's the best way to find me, at the-csd.com. And I'll tell you, one of the things that we pride ourselves on is that you can find us, like you can connect right with me. I'm also on our Instagram and on our Facebook. We have courses there, and we're really trying to connect with people at the ground level, because this is my legacy. If nobody else's, this is really mine. And so that's how they can find me. I'm also on the wisefamily.com, which is my group practice in my hometown of Alexandria, Virginia. So I'm really, of course, proud of that as well.
Well done, Amy. What a great legacy you're leaving, and what a great way to be helping our upcoming colleagues have a really great opportunity to find a goodness of fit around some of the best supervision that they can match themselves with and go into their careers. It's an exciting career. It's a wonderful career. We are so fortunate to be able to do this, and how supervision can be such a critical piece in that process. So it's been great to have you with us today. Thank you for being with us. And I appreciate our time together.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Graham. I enjoyed myself.
Also want to thank you, our listeners, for dropping by and joining Amy and me. It's always great to have you with us as well. Regarding our episode today, I want to remind you that it and an archive of all of our episodes and resource materials can be found on our webpage at triadhq.com/BHT. Thanks again for being on the show, and we'll look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today.